You have 3 days to leave the house. That's what my sister said to me. Not in a fight, not in anger. She said it over roast chicken and red wine, like it was just another item on the menu. And my parents? They didn't argue, they didn't even look up. That's the moment I realized I wasn't part of this family. I was a placeholder until the golden child returned. But what they forgot was that while they whispered, I had receipts. While they schemed, I had the deed. And while they thought I would just walk away, I was already holding the eviction notice. This is not just a story about betrayal. This is a story about reclaiming everything they tried to take from me. It was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday evening in the quiet suburbs of Oregon. The kind of evening where the air carried the scent of grilled barbecue and rosemary potatoes, and the fire crackled softly in the brick hearth. Madison Rivers, 31, had spent the afternoon preparing the meal. She'd seasoned the chicken just the way her dad liked it and made Harper's favorite cornbread, even though Harper hadn't asked. The table was set for four, forks aligned, linen napkins folded, soft jazz playing in the background, a portrait of normalcy on the surface. Madison sat quietly across from her younger sister, Harper, who was swirling a glass of Pinot Noir like she was on some reality cooking show. Their parents, Evelyn and Mark, sat at either end of the table, chewing in silence, their eyes flitting everywhere except at Madison. Halfway through the meal, Harper set her wine glass down with a little too much flair. Her voice was calm, almost sweet. "You have 3 days to leave the house, Maddie." The air didn't move. Madison looked up slowly. "Excuse me?" Harper leaned back, crossing her arms. "It's not personal. We just think it's time you found your own place. You've been here long enough." "We," the word echoed. Madison turned to her parents. Her mother looked down at her plate. Her father cleared his throat but didn't speak. It was like a bad dream, only she was wide awake, and every heartbeat was a drumbeat in her ears. She didn't flinch. Instead, she reached for her leather tote on the floor beside her chair. Her fingers brushed over the thick folder she hadn't opened in months but never went anywhere without. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled it out and laid it beside her untouched dinner plate. She flipped it open to the first page, the deed. "Actually," Madison said, her voice low but unwavering, "you all have 24 hours. The silence that followed didn't just hang in the air, it cut through it. Harper blinked, confused. Her mother finally looked up, her eyes flicking from the document to Madison's face. Her father set his fork down, the sound sharp against the ceramic plate. "What is this?" Harper asked, her tone brittle now. "It's the deed to this house," Madison replied, sliding it toward her sister. "Signed, notarized, and filed nearly 2 years ago, in my name." For a moment, no one moved. It was as if the warmth of the fireplace had vanished, replaced by a chill that swept through the room. "This has to be a joke," Harper whispered. "I wish it were," Madison said. "But I paid off the mortgage. I refinanced it when no one else could. I kept this roof over all our heads while you were off finding yourself in Bali or wherever." Her mother opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Madison looked around the table. "I didn't do it for praise. I did it because I loved this house, because someone had to. But what you did tonight, this stunt, this betrayal, that changed things." She stood, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Her voice didn't rise, but it no longer trembled. "You have until tomorrow evening to leave, or I get the law involved. This isn't revenge, it's reclamation." Harper stared, stunned. Their parents said nothing. Madison turned and walked out of the room, her footsteps steady, her hands only slightly shaking. Behind her, the warmth of the dinner turned cold. And the reckoning had begun. 3 years before the dinner-turned declaration, the house had been hanging by a thread. Back then, no one talked about the late notices piling up in the junk drawer, about the final warnings from the mortgage company, or the pink slips tucked under magnets on the fridge. Her father had quietly lost nearly his entire retirement savings to a failed startup investment. Her mother's medical expenses after a second minor stroke had drained the rest. Harper? She was somewhere in Thailand, tagging yoga retreats and smoothie bowls on Instagram while journaling about healing and high vibrations. Madison never told them how close they came to losing everything. She just acted. She was 28, newly freelancing as a residential designer. Her income was inconsistent, but she had good credit and a stubborn sense of loyalty. She met with a credit union, explained the situation, and refinanced the mortgage under her name. She took a small business loan, using her project portfolio as leverage. The guest room became her world. By day, it was her office. By night, her bedroom. She lived off canned soup and stress, slept in bursts, and juggled 3 clients at once. Every dollar she made went to bills. Every month she prayed nothing else would break. Her parents never asked. They thanked her when the foreclosure notices stopped, but they didn't ask how. And Madison let them believe the miracle had arrived from nowhere. She didn't want applause. She wanted peace. But her peace came at a price. It meant hiding her own struggles while smiling through theirs. It meant carrying the emotional and financial weight of a house that no one else seemed to notice was still standing because of her. She kept every receipt, every tax form, every repair invoice, not out of spite, but out of instinct. Some part of her always knew. And even as she sanded floorboards or painted walls after work, Madison whispered to herself the truth. You saved this place. Not because they asked, not because they thanked you, but because you couldn't bear to see it fall. She never expected to use that folder, never thought it would become armor, until Harper came home, smiling like she owned everything. And their parents, they let her. That's when Madison understood. History forgets who paid the bill. It only remembers who speaks loudest. But she had something louder than a voice. She had proof. It started with a text message, not to Madison, of course, to their parents. Can I crash for a bit while I figure things out? Harper didn't ask. She announced, as if she were asking for her old bedroom back, not permission to rewrite the past. She arrived 3 days later in a rideshare SUV, blonde hair perfectly flat-ironed, designer duffel slung over her shoulder, and the same perfume she wore in college trailing behind her like a flag of conquest. Madison was in the kitchen, elbow-deep in dishwater, when she heard the front door open. Their father's voice cracked through the air, light and unburdened in a way Madison hadn't heard in years. Pumpkin! It was the kind of welcome reserved for prodigal children, and Harper played the part flawlessly. Air kisses for Mom, giggling over airport security, acting like she hadn't ghosted the family for the last 2 holiday seasons. Madison wiped her hands on a towel and watched from the doorway. Not a glance. Harper didn't acknowledge her, didn't smile, didn't nod. It was as if Madison didn't exist, as if the woman who paid the electric bill was just another shadow in the house. Within 24 hours, Harper had taken the master bedroom. She needs space to heal, their mom said. She's going through a lot, their dad added, eyes down. Madison had questions, like why healing required silk robes and monopolizing the bathroom for an hour every morning, why Harper laughed loudest at dinner, dominated every conversation, and left her coffee cup wherever she pleased. But she asked nothing, not yet. Instead, she watched them slip back into old rhythms. Mom hovered around Harper like a doting assistant. Dad lit up every time she spoke. And Harper? She reclaimed her throne like she'd never left. Madison once again faded into the wallpaper. History, it seemed, had a short memory. But Madison didn't. It happened on a Tuesday night. The kind of evening when the air was cool but still, and the cicadas sang in the background like they knew secrets no one else did. Madison was in the hallway, heading to the kitchen to make chamomile tea, when she heard it, voices drifting in from the front porch. She paused near the screen door, just out of sight, the glow from the porch light casting long, soft shadows across the hardwood floor. She's always been intense, Harper said, her voice hushed but edged with condescension. Their mother let out a sigh that felt like surrender. She carries everything like it's her burden to bear. There was a pause, then the words that sank deep into Madison's bones. She's always been the one to hold things together, Evelyn said. But she doesn't know how to let go. Harper chuckled. Honestly, I think she likes it. The martyr role, the silent saint routine. Madison stood still, heart thudding. She pressed her hand against the wall to ground herself. The teacup in her fingers suddenly felt heavy. And then came her father's voice, lower, more distant, but unmistakable. Maybe she should get her own place. Might be good for her to have space. Space. The word wrapped itself around Madison's chest like wire. She wanted to step out and scream, wanted to throw open the door and ask them when she had become the inconvenience in a house she held together with every late-night email, every unpaid bill she covered, every repair she coordinated. But she didn't. She just stood there, still, quiet, like she always did. And something inside her began to shift. They weren't just tolerating Harper's return. They were rebuilding the world around her, with Madison carefully pushed to the edge, framed as the problem, the tension, the weight. And they were starting to believe it. The next morning, her mom didn't ask if she wanted coffee. At dinner, Harper laughed at a joke Madison didn't hear. When Madison reached for the salt, Harper was already holding it but didn't pass it. Just kept talking, smiling, like Madison wasn't even there. And their parents? They went along, smiling, nodding, glazing over the friction like frosting over a cracked cake. Madison began to notice the smaller things. The stack of her mail left unopened on the table. The way her favorite mug disappeared, then reappeared in the guest room. How Harper rearranged the spice cabinet she had organized meticulously, laughing that it was chaos before. No one asked. No one acknowledged the changes. They just happened. One night, Madison walked into the living room to find them all sitting around the fire. Harper was holding court, retelling stories of her retreat in Sedona, her brief engagement, her plans to maybe write a book about reinvention. This house is really too much for Maddie alone, Harper said offhandedly, swirling her wine. Maybe we should consider downsizing, something quieter, simpler. Madison froze in the doorway. No one looked at her. She turned and walked back to her room without a sound. And then, for the first time, she locked the door. Not out of fear, but out of foresight. She didn't need to fight them yet, but she started to prepare. Because Madison Rivers was done being the afterthought in a home she saved. She knew what was coming. And this time, she would not be caught off guard. It was the kind of evening designed to disarm. Roast chicken crisped to golden perfection. Garlic mashed potatoes in a serving bowl passed down from their grandmother. A lemon vinaigrette salad their mom always made when she wanted things to feel normal. The table was set for 4, napkins folded like swans. Harper had even picked up a bottle of wine from the boutique shop downtown, announcing it was something special as she poured glasses with flair. Madison watched it all unfold like a play she had already seen a dozen times. The way Harper lit up the room, the way their parents leaned in, the way her own presence became smaller with every minute. They talked about nothing and everything. Harper's potential memoir, a yoga certification retreat in Santa Fe, some influencer friend who'd manifested a condo with ocean views. Madison barely spoke. She wasn't sulking, she was studying. She knew something was coming. And she was right. Halfway through the meal, Harper set down her glass. Her fingers were perfectly manicured, her smile slow, deliberate. "Maddie," she said, her voice a purr, "you have 3 days to move out." Just like that. A single sentence dropped between bites of chicken and sips of wine. Madison didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She looked at her parents. Her mother stared at her plate. Her father reached for the salt. No one came to her defense. "Excuse me?" Madison said, calm but razor-edged. Harper tilted her head. "It's not personal. We just think it's time you moved on. You've been here a long time. It's not healthy." The word felt like a branding iron. Her father cleared his throat. "It's not about the house. It's about peace." "Peace?" Madison repeated. "You think this is peace?" Harper leaned in, elbows on the table as if confiding. "Your energy, it's heavy. We're always walking on eggshells around you. I just don't want the tension anymore." Madison stared at her sister, the girl who hadn't paid a single bill, who came back from whatever yoga-fueled self-discovery tour she'd been on, and declared herself empress of a house she didn't lift a finger to save. Heavy? No. She was grounded, and tonight she was done playing small. She reached down beside her chair, pulled out her leather bag, and unzipped the folder she kept with her, not out of fear, but foresight. With deliberate calm, she pulled out the deed and slid it across the table. "Actually," she said, "you all have 24 hours. Silence fell. Not the awkward kind, the kind that suffocates. Harper stared at the page like it was written in a foreign language. Their mother's eyes widened, flicking from the paper to Madison, while their father set down his fork with trembling hands. "What is this?" Harper snapped. "The deed to the house," Madison replied. "Signed, notarized, legally binding, in my name, 18 months ago, the day I paid off the last of the mortgage." She pulled out another document. "Here's the insurance, the tax records, the receipts from every repair you never noticed, the mold remediation, the new roof, the bills I paid while you were gone." Harper stood, the legs of her chair screeching. Her voice lost its polish. "So this is what this is about, control." "No," Madison said evenly. "This is about respect, something none of you seem to think I deserve." Her mother whispered, "You're kicking out your family." Madison turned to her. "I'm reclaiming what I built, what I sacrificed my 20s for. You let her walk in and treat me like a tenant in my own home, and you said nothing." Her father mumbled, "We didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Madison said. "It was easier to believe I was just here, floating, invisible." Harper scoffed. "No wonder no one wants to live with you. You're impossible, always playing the victim." "I never asked for sympathy," Madison said, standing, "but I also won't be erased." She pulled out one last paper, a stamped letter from her attorney. "This is a formal notice of eviction. You have 24 hours. The locksmith comes tomorrow at noon." Harper's face twisted. "You wouldn't dare." Madison met her gaze. "You dared first." And with that, she sat back down. Not to finish dinner, but to watch the silence swallow the room whole. Madison didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed listening to the creaks and sighs of the old house, every sound amplified by silence. It wasn't fear keeping her awake. It was something deeper. The slow, surreal unraveling of a chapter she'd tried so hard to hold together. By morning, the house felt different. Not empty, not yet, but lighter somehow. At 8:13 a.m., she heard Harper's voice through the cracked open window, sharp, commanding. "Just bring the truck around the side. I don't need help, I just need you to be fast." No dramatics, no tearful pleas, just logistics. Madison stayed in her room. She didn't go out to gloat, didn't peek through curtains. She sat at the edge of her bed, legs crossed, a mug of coffee cradled in her hands, watching steam curl and disappear. Around 9 o'clock there was movement, footsteps on the stairs, the low thud of boxes, the muffled clink of glass being wrapped. Her father's shuffle in the hallway, her mother's hushed voice reminding someone to label fragile. At 10:07, Madison stepped out for more coffee. The hallway was empty, but the air was heavy, like after a thunderstorm, when everything smells like iron and unresolved tension. Her father sat in his old recliner, staring blankly at the muted television. Remote in hand, thumb hovering over the volume button, but never pressing it. He didn't look up. He didn't speak. Just let her walk by like she was a ghost in her own story. In the kitchen, her mother was packing dishes into a cardboard box marked Dining Fragile. She looked up, startled by Madison's presence, then quickly looked back down. "Your father doesn't know where we'll go yet," she said softly, wrapping a plate in newspaper. "Harper offered her place in Portland, just for a while. It'll be cramped." Madison didn't respond. She poured her coffee, quiet, steady. Her mother hesitated. "She didn't mean to hurt you." "She did," Madison said flatly, "and you let her." Her mother's shoulders dropped. She didn't argue, she didn't cry, she just reached for another plate. By 11:40 it was nearly done. The front door opened and closed 3 times in close succession. Once for Harper, once for Evelyn, once for Mark. No goodbyes. No final glances. Only the sound of departure and the wind tapping gently against the shutters. At 12:03 p.m., Madison walked to the door, turned the deadbolt slowly, and felt it click into place. It was done. Not with screaming, not with slamming doors, but with the kind of silence that splits things open. She walked room by room, checking corners like she was taking inventory of a life no longer shared. The scent of Harper's perfume still lingered in the master. Her dad's cologne haunted the hallway. Her mother's gardening gloves sat forgotten on the windowsill. She didn't touch anything, not yet. She just stood in the middle of the living room, the room where birthdays were celebrated, where fights had simmered, where she once sat curled up with textbooks and popcorn, and she breathed. The stillness didn't feel peaceful. It felt like aftermath, but also strangely like possibility. For the first time in years, the house belonged to her. Fully. And though it wasn't victory in the traditional sense, it was something better. Sovereignty. And Madison wasn't afraid of the quiet anymore. She was ready to build something new from it. The next morning arrived without ceremony. No footsteps above her room, no clinking mugs in the kitchen, no low murmurs drifting from behind half-closed doors. Just silence. And for once it wasn't suffocating, it was still. Madison woke just past 7. No alarm, no anxiety jolting her upright. Just sunlight filtering through the blinds, drawing soft gold lines across the floorboards. She brewed coffee, her coffee. Not the compromise blend her dad liked or the oversweet vanilla roast Harper insisted on. Just the kind she loved, dark, a little bitter, honest. She sat by the window and looked out at the garden. The roses were wilting. Her mom had insisted on keeping them for years, even though they bloomed less and less. Madison had offered to replant the bed with lavender or rosemary, things that could thrive without fuss, but Evelyn always said no. Now? Now she would dig them up. Not out of spite, but because letting go is also an act of care. She finished her coffee, pulled on old jeans and a faded hoodie, and went outside with gloves and a shovel. The air was brisk, the sky overcast, Oregon gray, but it felt good. She pulled the rose bushes up by the roots, one by one, and set them aside. Their thorns caught her gloves, but she didn't flinch. Then she laid fresh soil and planted something new. Lavender, hardy, low maintenance, beautiful without needing to be perfect. She stood back and smiled. By noon she had cleared the master bedroom, the one Harper claimed. Gone were the silk pillowcases and scented candles. Madison opened every window, let fresh air pour in, stripped the bedding, and repainted the walls a soft, stormy gray. She hung a single photograph above the bed, herself at the summit of Mount Rainier, arms wide, hair tangled, grinning like someone who had nothing left to prove. Later that afternoon, she moved to the hallway. The old family portraits, matching sweaters, forced smiles came down. Not to erase, but to relieve. She boxed them gently, labeled the container, history, not obligation. She converted the guest room back into an office. A real one this time. Not a survival bunker with cords snaking underfoot and paperwork teetering in piles. She bought a standing desk, positioned it in the warmest part of the room, where golden hour poured through the windows like a promise. And in every task she breathed easier. Not because the house was quieter, but because it had finally stopped echoing someone else's version of her. At dusk, she lit a candle, not out of ritual, just because it smelled like cedar and calm. She curled up on the sofa with a bowl of pasta and a book she'd been meaning to read for 3 years. She spilled sauce on the throw pillow and laughed out loud, genuine, full-bellied laughter, because no one was going to make her feel careless for it. For the first time, she wasn't adjusting herself to be easier, or quieter, or more likable. She was just here, present, whole, enough. A few days later, a letter arrived. White envelope, no return address, but she knew the handwriting. Her mother's cursive, looping, careful. The kind that once wrote birthday cards with stickers in the corners. She stood by the mailbox holding it, and then she opened it. It wasn't an apology. It was forgiveness. I forgive you, her mother wrote, for what you did, for how you've chosen to separate. Harper was trying. We still love you, even if we don't understand you anymore. Madison folded the letter in half, then dropped it in the recycling bin. Not out of anger, but because she no longer needed love that came with conditions. She poured herself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the light fall across the new lavender plants. And she smiled. Because some stories don't need closure. They just need a door, and the strength to close it. Sometimes the deepest pain doesn't come from betrayal, but from the silence of those who were supposed to stand by you. Madison never asked to be understood. She didn't seek applause. She simply chose to stop carrying everything alone, to stop shrinking for the comfort of others, and to reclaim what she built, brick by brick, bill by bill, night after night. If you've ever been called too much, too responsible, or too different by your own family, remember, you don't need their permission to live freely. You just need the courage to close the wrong door and finally open the right one. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt like Madison? And if this story resonated with you, subscribe to Sweet Revenge, Happy Ending for more emotional, empowering stories every week. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.